Hello and welcome to EDU. I'm Eric DeRise. Today we're going to talk about the value of teaching knowledge versus the value of subject matter knowledge. Let's get started, shall we? Hey, wait a minute, I've got to stop the video for just a second here because I want to remind you to click the like button if you like this video. And while you're at it, why not click on the subscribe button so that when I make new videos you can get notifications about them. And also at the end of the video, please leave your comments in the comments section. I'm really interested in your feedback, okay? All right, let's get back to the video. There is a lot of confusion about what qualifies a person to be a good teacher due to what qualifies a person to be hired to teach. Most colleges require professors to have at least 18 graduate credit hours in the subject being taught, as well as a master's degree from a regionally accredited university. And most school districts require teachers to have at least a bachelor's degree from a regionally accredited university in the subject being taught, or 30 undergraduate credit hours in the subject being taught, along with a bachelor's degree in anything. So the questions have to be asked. Is expertise in a subject enough to make one a good teacher? And when do these teachers learn to actually teach? I believe that there is a lot more to teaching than just expertise in a subject. If you listen to experts of teaching, such as Carnegie professor Dr. Lee Shulman, then you know that there are at least 7 vital aspects of teaching that have nothing to do with the subject being taught. Dr. Shulman gave a famous speech on the advancement of teaching and discussed how his theories can improve teaching in the future. Teachers have a number of goals to achieve in the teaching process. They have to teach their curriculum to their students as is laid out by their institution. They have to measure and evaluate the retention of the curriculum by the students they are teaching. And they have to report the success rate of their students' learning of the curriculum. But the object of their goals as teachers is a combination of learning, knowing, and understanding the curriculum for the betterment of society. Dr. Shulman states that in his studies of teaching, he has had to ask how to best teach the professions such as medicine, law, and engineering to those whom people will have to trust to know that, what they are doing. But knowing is not enough for professionals. The study of theory is not enough to succeed in these kinds of professions. Instead, these professions have to be able to do things and think in certain ways under pressure. But at the same time, they have to exercise these things with honesty, commitment, values, and integrity. In other words, the schools have to instill in their students a sense of professional identity, values, and commitment as a service to society. Dr. Shulman also reminds the audience that teaching is an ongoing learning process for the teachers as well as the students, and that the challenge of teaching is that it is a never-ending process. Dr. Shulman talks about a variety of aspects of teaching at the Carnegie Foundation Award event in Louisville, Kentucky. He included a backstory on Abraham Flexner, which began long before Shulman took his position, which was first held by Flexner himself. He explained how he was motivated by Flexner to work towards the advancement of teaching for the betterment of society. And he explained how in this process of carrying on Flexner's work, he had come to the realization that there are 3 kinds of habits of learning needed in order to succeed in the learning process. These habits of learning include habits of the mind, the hand, and the heart. This is the overall focus of his speech. He states that one of the most important learning habits, of course, is the habit of the mind. The students have to learn and understand the information which is taught to them. They also need to develop the learning habit of the hands, so that they can practice what they are learning. And finally, they need to develop the learning habit of the heart, so that they can exercise what they have learned with integrity for the betterment of society. In an effort to create a better understanding of how to achieve these 3 habits, Dr. Shulman explains how they can be developed through the exercise of the 7 signature pedagogies. In his speech, Dr. Schulman explains how all of the professions have differing pedagogies. For law, it is not about fairness, it's about confrontation. And in medicine, it's about the patient. The teaching pedagogies vary as you move from one profession to another. But there are 7 signature pedagogies which are essential and consistent in the teaching process, regardless of the profession being taught. The first one is that they are routine, habitual, pervasive, and persistent in the settings in which they are used. This is important because both the teacher and the student know what they are doing in the learning process. The second is that the learning process almost always involves the need for public performances by the students. This is important because the greatest enemy of learning is invisibility. In this scenario, a student is likely to shut down the learning process because they don't think that they will be held accountable for what they have learned. The third is that students must exercise accountable talk, which shows that they are listening to each other and are engaged in the discussion. This is important because the learning process creates a scenario where the students are not just being taught by the teacher, they are potentially teaching each other as well. The fourth is that uncertainty and an adaptive characteristic are key for the teaching process. There is a sense of interdependence in the classroom. This is important because without it, there will be no learning. There will be no learning without interaction. And teachers have to be prepared to adapt to the unpredictable aspects of interaction. The fifth is that when called upon in class, students are not emotionless. This is important because emotions can affect how a student responds, learns, and contributes. That anxiousness can amplify the learning process, but lack of that emotion can take away the learning opportunity. The sixth is made up of critical elements of formation, which are created here. They are the development of values and a sense of identity, character, and a sense of puzzlement of what to do. This is important because emotion is a prerequisite for formation, which are of the heart as well as of the mind and the hand. And finally, the seventh pedagogy is that these are also pedagogies of personal responsibility. This is important because they can lead to the development of deep understanding, highly flexible skill, and deep commitment. As both a student and an educator, I have experienced the application of the 7 signature pedagogies, the best example of which would be the year when I taught television and video production at the college level. The curriculum was for the development of a profession, which requires the application of all 7 signature pedagogies in a variety of arenas, the most unusual of which is the shooting of video on location where one has to adapt to an extremely unpredictable environment. As an instructor in this arena, I had to apply the 4th pedagogy, which is the ability to adapt to unpredictable situations so as to ensure my students' learning processes for the sake of their professional development. But at the same time, they had to exercise the 2nd pedagogy in this scenario, which is the practice of public performance. They had to actually adapt themselves and shoot their video for the sake of their assignment. And when they were called on to adapt to these unpredictable situations, they had to use their emotions to motivate them to answer accurately, thereby utilizing the 5th pedagogy, which states that without these emotions, the learning process will fail because it isn't important enough to the student. Also, when back at the classroom studio, students had to exercise the 3rd pedagogy, which is the exercise of accountable talk as they discussed how they could have handled unpredictable situations on the location video shoot. In other words, they had to show that they were listening to each other in the discussion so that they could actively participate in the learning discussion. The value of these pedagogies to teachers is not just in the curriculum design, but also in how to think about the teaching process with their students. Teaching class with the pedagogy theories in mind will enable teachers to retain these theories more effectively through application. Later, an analysis of the results of this application should be conducted for a greater understanding of how the teachers can utilize these theories in their own classroom. Teachers who are aware of these 7 signature pedagogies are likely to conduct their classes in a manner which is the result of this awareness, thereby improving the learning process for their students. Consequently, it would be to the advantage of these teachers to not just learn about Dr. Schulman's 7 signature pedagogy theories, but to also find new and better ways to apply them to how they design their curriculum and conduct their classroom sessions, because his theories are essential to teaching adult learners effectively. Dr. Schulman's 7 signature pedagogies are proof that effective teaching requires more than just expertise. They require training in teaching. My first teaching job started me off teaching in a subject in which I had expertise, but eventually I was trained by the school to teach other subjects within the degree program for which I had no expertise. During this time, I was also studying learning theory because I was committed to teaching my students effectively. The result was that my students were reporting that they had learned more from me than they had learned from my expert colleagues who prioritized their subjects over teaching. In other words, they created a sink or swim environment. It was that kind of learning environment where they were just teaching at their students as opposed to making sure that they learned what they needed to know in order to succeed in their careers. I believe school districts and colleges could learn something from this lesson, although in their defense, most school districts do also provide some training in learning theory after their teachers are hired. Still, I find it ironic that teachers are not being hired for their knowledge of teaching. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and why not click on the subscribe button while you're at it, and please give me your feedback in the comments section, okay? I'm really interested in finding out what you think. Take care.